Hey everybody, Sam here today for Technique Tuesday. In the past, what we've been doing is we've been doing progressions from the lowest progression to probably the hardest exercise within that given exercise. Today we're just going to go over the rowing pattern and some ways that you can clean it up and do it properly without putting any extra stress on your body that you don't need to. So I'm going to demonstrate two different exercises. One is just going to be the dumbbell row. The second one's going to be the band row, or you can think kind of like a cable type of row. I'll just kind of walk you guys through it. Just some tips and some tricks that you can do to put yourself in the best position. So with the dumbbell row, if we're going on the bench right here, we have one knee on the bench, and then some people end up putting their leg too close to the bench. I like to kick it out a little bit further. This just helps to make sure that our hips stay level, which will then in turn help us to keep our back nice and level. From here, I'm going to lean forward. When we're setting up right here, we want to try to have our knee underneath our hip and then our hand right underneath our shoulder. That's going to help us put us in the best position possible. And you can see once I'm right here, my back is nice and flat. If I would have something on my back, it would stay right there the whole time. You can see if I bring my foot closer, I end up rounding a little bit more just because my legs are so close to the bench, it ends up rising the left side of my hip. So if I kick it out a little bit, it'll help keep everything nice and level. Now from here, when we're actually doing that rowing motion, you want to think as we're pulling up, we're kind of pulling up more towards that back pocket right here. One downfall is when people row too close with too much elbow flexion right here, as opposed to bringing it kind of back. Your shoulder, I know my shirt isn't the best for this right now, but your shoulder ends up rounding forward pretty far. That can just put a little bit extra stress on that shoulder that you don't need. So if I'm back here, I'm thinking I'm going to kind of pull back towards my pocket and lower it back down. You can tell as I'm rowing up, my arm basically comes right in line with my rib cage right here and back down. Some people think really far back here, and again, that's doing that same thing. We're just dipping that shoulder forward, not putting it in not the best position. The second thing about when we're rowing is we want to make sure there is a little bit of space in between our arm and our rib cage. If you end up coming too close and too tight in the body, again, just kind of with that shoulder movement, it'll end up tipping it a little bit forward at that shoulder. So if I'm really close, you can't kind of pull it back towards that pocket. So one thing that I personally like to do is I just rotate my hand slightly, my thumb slightly towards my body, and I'm thinking I'm kind of just pulling back towards my hip pocket right here, and back down. So that's two things for the dumbbell row. So keep a little space, kick that hand out, position-wise, knee under the hip, hand underneath the shoulder, keeping everything nice and flat. So going with the band row or a cable row, you can think of too. Everything's going to stay pretty much the same. So right here, we're going to get in that good position. If you watch the deadlift, I always say keep that rib cage down. A lot of people end up arching a little bit. So just from that initial movement, I'm going to think rib cage down. I'm going to get in a little athletic position, ribs down, so I'm not arching in that lower back. And then that first, like one other thing I like to do is I kind of just like to reset my shoulders down. And then from here, as I'm pulling back, you can see I'm keeping my arms at 90. If I end up pulling up too high right here, this one you can see better that my shoulders tend to round forward, and then I'm starting to shrug a little bit too. We want to be thinking about squeezing in that mid-back area. So that little athletic position, we're rolling back towards us, keeping those elbows at about 90 degrees here, and slow control on the way out. And then still, just like the dumbbell row, we want to keep a little bit of space. I know you can't see, but there is a little bit of space in between, like I can move my hand in between my arm and my side right here as I'm doing this. It doesn't have to be much space. I'm not flaring them out super wide. I just have maybe about a fist distance in between, just to help put my shoulder in the best possible position as I'm doing this. So this can be something that you can add to any type of exercise, whether you're doing a TRX row, like a high pull from a cable up high. Everything still remains the same, that we're not getting too much of that elbow flexion, keeping a little bit of space, rib cage down, all that good position. So those are just a couple techniques that you guys can use when you're doing the rowing type of exercise.